If you started playing MECCHA Chameleon thinking it was just another stylish platformer, you have likely realized the game is not here to be easy. It demands precision, quick reading, and, most importantly, mastery of mechanics it does not always explain clearly. That is exactly where many people get stuck. In this video, I will show you 10 advanced tips that truly made a difference in my gameplay. Stay with me until the end, because at least one tip in this video will help you significantly. I am Matthew, and the video is about to start. One of the most underrated aspects is the exact moment you transition colors while hiding. Many players just try to get close to the environment's color, but if you really want to disappear in front of other players, you need to be more precise. That is where the eyedropper tool comes in, and honestly, it changes the game completely. Instead of adjusting manually and hoping for the best, you simply copy the exact color of the wall or object you are leaning against. This gives you a perfect base, practically an instant camouflage that fools even those who are accustomed to the game. The detail that makes this an advanced tip is the timing. It is not just about copying the color, it is about doing so while already well positioned, preferably still and in a place where the enemy does not expect someone to be. When you combine positioning with this color precision, you become practically invisible, and in more competitive matches, this makes a huge difference. Once you get into the habit of using the eyedropper whenever you hide, it is hard to go back. You start to realize how much you were almost invisible before, but not quite enough. In this game, that almost is exactly what gives away your position. This tip completely changes the way you view camouflage. It is not just about copying the scenery's color, it is about understanding how light works in that environment. When you start paying attention to where the lighting comes from, you realize you can trick the eye of someone looking for you much more efficiently. The trick is to think of your character almost as a 3D object within the map. If the light is coming from above or from one side, the part of your body that receives that light will naturally appear lighter. So when you paint that area with lighter tones, you reinforce that illusion. This helps you blend in better with the environment because you are not just copying color, you are copying light behavior. Now the backside is where many people go wrong. If you leave everything with the same tonality, your body becomes flat, artificial, and draws attention without you realizing it. When you darken the side opposite to the light, you create depth. This adds volume to the character and helps them integrate with the natural shadows of the scenery, especially in more detailed maps. Once I started applying this, I felt a massive difference in the number of times I went unnoticed. It is the type of detail that seems small, but in gameplay, it makes you virtually invisible in situations that would have been impossible before. It is less about quick reflexes and more about reading the environment, which makes the game much more interesting. This is one of those tips that seems simple, but when you truly start applying it, it completely changes how you play MECCHA Chameleon. Many people are still stuck on the basic idea of just leaning against a wall and trying to disappear there, but that is the first place everyone looks. What actually works is thinking as part of the scenery, not just as a color stuck to it. Instead of becoming just another wall, you start imitating objects, a painting, a vase, any decoration, even food on a table. The most interesting thing is that these elements go much more unnoticed because the player's brain already expects to see them there. When you do this well, you create a much stronger visual confusion. The opposing player is not just looking for a different color. They need to identify suspicious shapes, and that is when you gain precious seconds. And in MECCHA Chameleon, these seconds are everything. It is enough time to escape or catch someone off guard. After you get the hang of it, you start seeing the map differently. Each room becomes a set of disguise possibilities, not just hiding spots. Honestly, this is where the game becomes much more fun, because you stop just reacting and start deceiving on purpose. In MECCHA Chameleon, it is not just color that gives you away, it is the silhouette. This is exactly where emotes and poses come in. Many people forget this and just stand still trying to blend in, but the body shape still gives them away. When you start using crouching, lying down, or even certain gestures, your character no longer has that obvious player shape. They start to look like part of the scenery, or at least something that does not immediately draw attention. This is powerful because the human eye is much faster at recognizing shapes than colors. The most interesting thing is that each map favors a type of pose. In areas with many low objects, crouching is enough. In more open places, lying down might be what saves you. And there are emotes that create somewhat strange shapes, which completely confuse those searching. It looks like a bug, but it is pure strategy. Once you start thinking about your silhouette instead of just the paint, the game becomes something else. You stop being just a color chameleon and become a shape chameleon. Honestly, this is where you start surviving for much longer without even needing to move. This tip enters the level where you start playing with the perception of those hunting you. It is not enough to just get the color right. In MECCHA Chameleon, the pattern also gives many people away. If the floor is checkered or tiled, staying with a solid color might work from a distance, but up close, you become an easy target. The secret is to imitate the environment's pattern, especially these more geometric ones. If the floor has crossed lines, you do the same on your body, trying to align as much as possible with the tile where you are positioned. When you get this right, it is not just camouflage. It is pure visual confusion. What is most interesting is how this forces the hunter to actually stop and analyze. Before, they just glanced around looking for something out of place. Now, they need to focus, compare, and be sure. In that extra time they lose trying to decide if you are part of the scenery or not, you have already gained a huge advantage. After you start using more complex patterns, you can even feel the difference in other players' reactions. They walk right past, hesitate, turn back, and sometimes it is already too late. It is that kind of detail that seems like an exaggeration, but in actual gameplay, it makes a massive difference. There is a very common error I used to make often. I would set up a camouflage that looked perfect, but only from my own point of view. Then when the match starts, I would be found in seconds, and I would not even understand why until I discovered that the problem is almost always the angle. First-person view limits you too much when evaluating if you are truly well hidden. Third-person view, however, gives you a much more honest reading of the situation. It is as if you were seeing exactly what the hunter will see, and this completely changes how you adjust your camouflage. The way I use this is quite practical. Before the preparation time ends, I start rotating the camera around the character, testing different angles. I look for anything that breaks the disguise, a strange glint, a color that does not fit, or even a detail that only appears when you look from the side. When you create this habit, the game stops being trial and error and becomes something much more controlled. You are not just hiding, you are validating your camouflage as if you were another player trying to find you. This change in mentality makes a massive difference in your survival. This is almost a survival rule when you are playing as a hunter. At the beginning, there is that urge to start shooting at everything that looks even slightly suspicious, just to be sure. However, the game punishes exactly this type of behavior. Each missed shot costs health, and that is no small thing. So that habit of testing objects or firing in succession ends up putting you at a disadvantage very quickly. You might hit someone by luck, but most of the time you will just weaken yourself before actually finding a real target. What works much better is to control your aim and rely more on observation. Instead of reacting on impulse, you start noticing small details. Something that does not match the scenery, a slightly wrong pattern, an object poorly positioned. When you shoot, it is because you are almost certain, and this completely changes your efficiency. Once you get used to this more calculated pace, the game becomes even more tense, in a good way. Every shot matters, every decision carries weight, and when you land a hit, it feels much more earned. It is the type of adjustment that separates those who are just playing from those who have truly understood the role of a hunter. If you play as a hunter, this tip is practically an invisible radar. Instead of just looking at colors or shapes, start paying attention to the lighting. That is where many well-hidden players end up giving themselves away without realizing it. What you want to look for are things that do not make sense within the scenery. A shadow where it shouldn't exist, a strange glint on a surface that is normally matte, or even a reflection that does not match the rest of the environment. These small visual errors usually do not come from the map. They come from someone trying to camouflage themselves. Over time, you start training your eye for this. Instead of scanning the entire scenery randomly, you focus on these broken details. It is almost like identifying a glitch, but intentional. When you grasp this pattern, it becomes much easier to separate what is real scenery from what is a player trying to hide. After you internalize this, your way of hunting changes completely. You stop depending on luck and start acting with environmental reading. Best of all, even the most careful players end up making this type of error, so it is an advantage that works almost all the time. This tip completely changes the way you view the map while playing as a hunter. In the beginning, it is natural to focus only on what looks out of place. But as players get smarter, they start hiding exactly where no one pays attention, in plain sight. Corners and walls become perfect hiding spots when someone knows how to use painting well. The most curious thing is that the more obvious the place seems, the less we suspect it. A corner that is too clean, an apparently normal wall, sometimes that is exactly where someone is perfectly camouflaged. The secret is to train your gaze to be suspicious of what seems too perfect. Instead of just looking for movement, you start analyzing texture, alignment, small inconsistencies. A slightly broken pattern, a color that does not match 100%, a detail out of rhythm. These are the things that give them away. After you start checking these improbable points, you can notice a clear difference in performance. You stop depending on luck and start hunting much more intelligently. Honestly, there is nothing better than catching someone who thought they were completely invisible right in front of you. Playing in a hurry as a hunter is basically sabotaging yourself without realizing it. It seems like you are being efficient by running from one side to the other, but in practice, you are just accumulating poorly checked areas. And it is exactly in these areas that players survive until the end. The game does not demand speed, it demands control. When you understand that there is a time limit specifically designed to allow for a careful search, everything changes. You start treating the map as a sequence of zones to be cleared, not as a space to start reacting randomly. One thing that works very well is creating a logical flow of movement. You enter an area, check everything with real attention, and only then move forward. No turning back, no skipping parts. This creates a sense of constant progress and eliminates that chaos of not knowing where you have already looked properly. At the end of the day, the most dangerous hunter is not the fastest one, but the most consistent one. Because while one is running and letting details pass by, the other is clearing the map little by little until there is no space left for anyone to hide.